Hey guys, welcome back to the new name, Working on What? AKA DC Fab. I have a really cute little grandson who always comes out to the garage and asks Grandpa what he's working on. So I think we're gonna try out the name Working on What for a little while and see how that goes. But anyway, today I'm going to be working on my 22 Yamaha RMAX 2 LE. All right, today I had a few last minute parts come in. I've got 3 little projects I'm gonna do before my trip to the Hatfield-McCoy trails this weekend. One, we have a lug nut solution for the very tight fit of your socket on the factory lug nuts. And 2, we're gonna be installing the Weller air block-off plate to help with the D-cell back popping and noise making when you let off the throttle. And then the third thing we're going to be doing is installing a Weller Racing exhaust tip as well with the lug nuts. What I found is that the factory lug nuts, you have a hard time getting a socket into the wheel to fit them. You can't use an impact socket. You can only use a thin wall chrome socket is what I found. And obviously it's not really designed for the impact wrench or for a lug nut socket. And even when you do that, it's so tight in the wheel that a lot of times you can see the marring on the socket itself just from putting these on. I have to spray the wheel with WD-40 just to keep it from galling up in there when I'm taking the lug nuts on and off. But anyway, I've got a solution to that. My solution is I'm gonna go to a splined lug nut. Here's the Gorilla part number. It is a 12 by 125 thread, and it's the bulge taper seat, but instead of a hex, it's the spline drive, which is kind of like a security feature as well. So here's one of the lug nuts. It's just a spline drive like you would get for your car or anything else, and these are actually probably universal for a car, UTV, whatever. But the main thing to remember is on the RMAX, the bolt pattern is metric 12 by 125. And we're gonna go ahead and replace all those with these. And this socket is so much thinner in diameter compared to, so you won't have any more clearance issues with your socket. And it's more compact and smaller to carry on the trail. You can use a 19 millimeter or a 21 millimeter socket to access your spline wrench as well. So we're gonna get on to replacing all of those. I'm gonna do all 4 wheels and the spare. I ordered a set of 20 lug nuts, and since there are only 4 lugs per wheel, 20 will cover your spare also. Because I don't have it jacked up, I'm just gonna do 2 lugs at a time. And I've already got WD-40 in the holes. That's why the socket's not biting right now. I'm not trying to grab it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on. I'm gonna put 2 on and snug them up and then take the other 2 off. That way I don't have to jack the vehicle up. 1/8 inch clearance around this, whereas this socket, like I have to make sure it's perfectly centered. There is 0 clearance on that edge with these wheels. And I know these are aftermarket wheels, but even the OE wheels, it's a pretty tight fit. So it helps. That's the main reason I decided to do this, is so that if I am on the trail and there's mud packed in those holes or something, I don't have to worry about digging that stuff out. I know I have clearance to get this done. So I'll come back and torque these. I just want to get them on right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these 2 off. But a quick, convenient solution to having to worry about that on the trail or when you're out and away, or you don't have the right socket, or you lost your socket or anything like that. This is just a more universal system. And I know these are spline, but it's not like a locking spline. It's a pretty universal spline. So you could even order a second one if you were worried about losing the key wrench. But I'm not gonna worry about that this trip. I'm just gonna make sure this stays with the vehicle somewhere in my toolkit. All right, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go around all 4 wheels in the spare, and that gives me a lot more clearance. All right, the other thing I'm gonna be installing today is the Weller Racing air injection block-off plate kit. You can see it's pretty simple. It's really straightforward. I'll get you over to the machine in just a second and show you. But it's just 2 bolts, a vacuum cap where the original line goes in, and then a zip tie to hold it on. So I'll get you over here to the machine and I'll show you where it goes. There's been other videos on this, but I'll walk you through it really quickly. Okay guys, in my application, the block-off plate is just on top of the engine on the valve cover. I'll show you where that is if you don't already know. It's very accessible. Had to let my spare tire down, and now I'm gonna tilt the bed back. And I'm gonna get you in here, and I'll show you exactly where this block-off plate goes. So, it's a little dark, but, so this plate right here, with one single air hose, that it's really dark. I'll bring a light in here in a minute. This plate just replaces that. So it gets rid of that. It gets rid of this hose that goes right up to a solenoid. And that's it. Here is the solenoid. Well, I'm right in front of the light. Let me do a better job of getting you in here. Okay. So if we look right here, that's the solenoid. That empty hose right there is where I just took the line that ran from right here all the way down to right there, which is on top of the valve cover. And so I just removed those 2 bolts, removed that clamp right there, took that off. There's a cap for that portion of the valve. There's a cap that'll go right on there. And then the block-off plate will cover this. All right, guys, here it is all installed. So they're torqued to 6 foot-pounds. These 2 Allen screws right on either side of the plate, 6 foot-pounds. And the cap, which you can barely see, is right there. And instead of using the zip ties they included, I just happened to have a spring clamp that I put on there. So I use that as an alternative. But the zip ties would work fine. It's just a thin rubber cap. All right, guys, the third thing I want to show you tonight is we're going to be installing the Weller exhaust tip. We're going to go ahead and get this installed. Here's the factory location. There are 6 bolts here that I need to take off. Some people have had problems taking those out because they do build up carbon on the back side because they're exposed to the inside of the muffler and they build up carbon on them. But the trick to getting them off, what I've found in the past on similar applications, is to try and tighten them slightly first. It's like any other seized bolt. You want to try to tighten it just to break it a little bit first. Then you can start working it out. Don't just try to go home with it and take it all the way out. Work it back and forth a few times, going a little further each time. Let's see if we can get those out real quick, and then we'll move on to getting this installed with a little anti-seize on the new stainless steel hardware that came with it. It's 8mm are what these bolts are, so let's see what we got. With I'm going to tighten them a little bit first. Then we're going to back it out just a little bit. We're going to tighten it up. We'll back it out, tighten it up, back it out, tighten them up, back them out. And it looks like it came out pretty clean, so that's good. I'm happy with that. So let's move on to the other 5 bolts. Now the tightening and loosening technique is working very well. Yeah, I'm not just going home with the trigger. I'm taking my time with it and letting that way I can feel what the bolt's doing. All right, now it does say to reuse the factory gasket that's between the factory steel exhaust tip and in between the Weller. We're gonna reuse this factory gasket that's right here, which looks like a pretty typical centered metal gasket. Yeah, So anyway, here's a comparison. You can see there's the spark arrestor that's on here. Weller Racing is just a spark arrestor with an open tip, whereas this one, if we look closely, I'll kind of hold a light up behind it maybe. If you look at the very top, if I could see that, there is a slight gap there and a solid plate on the bottom. So it basically comes in from the side, disrupts the airflow a whole lot, which is where you're getting your sound attenuation from. And again, it's spark arrested with the screen, and then it comes out of the tip. But the Weller's a lot more direct flow. It's a lot larger diameter. So you will get a little increase in noise. But from what I've heard, we'll find out in a minute, it should just be a deeper, more mellow tone. And definitely freer flowing exhaust, which is great for performance overall. So we'll get that on there. I tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and here's the factory bolts that came from Weller, 6 new bolts. And I am going to put anti-seize on all of them. All right, guys, that's 6 foot-pounds on each of those bolts as well. And I believe that wraps it up. We'll do a startup real quick, kind of a cold start, just to get a sense of the sound. Hold on just a second. It's already